Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be colouring this 1920s Art Deco piece with my Copic markers and a few pro markers. If you want to see the inking process of this video, I'll leave a link to my previous video in the description below and at the end where I talk through how I ink this piece with my light box and my fine liners. But for now let's just get on with the colouring. So I began by colouring her skin, and for this I wanted it to be quite a light colour, so I used the E31 brick beige to lay out the shadows, and this creates one of the mid-tones within the skin. I used the E51 milky white and the E50 eggshell for the base. The E51 milky white is a new marker. I bought it the other day and I really like it so far. It's slightly darker than the E50 eggshell and gives a little bit more kind of colour to her face. And I used the E11 barley beige as a bit of a kind of reddish shadow, and E21 soft sun and YR01 puff peach as well. And I also used the BV31 violet marker to kind of give an extra hue in the skin, and I like using this to shade skin and I use it quite a lot in my drawings. And for the darker shadows I use the E44 clay, which is quite a muted brown colour and it kind of blends really quite nicely into the skin. And for the blush I use the R00 pinkish white. So when I'm colouring skin with Copic markers, I like to use the lighter tones, so in this case the E51 and the E50, to blend out the mid-tones and blend the darker shadows into the mid-tones. This creates a smoother effect, and layering colours like this helps to make skin look a little bit more natural, because the shading in this picture I wanted the skin to be much more kind of smoother and shaded, whereas the rest of the image I wanted it to look a bit more flat, especially the dress, because this kind of in keeps with the Art Deco style. And I also leave the blush till last, and I blend the blush out with the E50 as well. So as you can see next to the drawing there are quite a lot of blue and blue-green markers. This is because I chose these colours for the background and for her dress and the feathers. I chose these colours because firstly I really like teal colours, it's one of my favourite groups of colours there is, and also because I thought it would go nicely with the gold tones which I wanted to use for her hair and for some of the kind of metallic highlights later on. So I'm spending quite a lot of time on shading the skin and getting the shadows and blending it out, and this is because I wanted the skin to be the most shaded, if that makes sense, because I wanted the clothes pattern and the background to have a bit more of a flat appeal, because this is kind of the style of 1920s Art Deco pieces, especially kind of remakes of 1920s Art Deco pieces. So the skin needs to stand out a little bit as being kind of shadowed and slightly more realistic, even though it's not quite realistic. So before I add the E44 clay colour to make the darker shadows, I first add the BV31, the lilac tone, really kind of a pastel-y lilac. But this kind of helps to give an alternative hue to the skin, because so far all I've used are my E colours, and it kind of helps in the shadows just to kind of neutralise some of the earthy tones. And also I thought it would kind of bring out some of the purpley blue tones in the rest of the piece later on. But yeah, this is a really good technique to shade skin. So after finishing the skin, I moved on to the necklace. I wanted to create a kind of a fake pearl effect and bring out some of the blue tones a bit more in this. So I did the base colour with a BG000 pale aqua, and then used the shadows with the B93 light crockery blue. This is a new marker I bought recently because I've been watching quite a lot of Scribblefix's videos lately, and she uses quite a lot of this marker, and I fell in love with the colour and I just went and got it for myself. And this is how my marker collection grows. I see other people using different colours and I think that's a nice colour, I'm going to buy that too. So great for my marker collection, but not so good for my bank balance. So I wanted her lips to be quite a neutral colour rather than like a bright pink or a bright red, because I felt this would keep in quite nicely with the rest of the piece. It would go quite well, for example, with the gold tones and for the kind of subtle highlights and shadows in her skin. So I used the E04 lipstick neutral for the base colour of the lips, and then I shaded with the E44 clay, which was the same colour I used for the shadows in the skin. And I added a very slight bit of RV04, a shock pink, which is a kind of a bright colour, but because I'd added the neutral tones on first, it didn't really do too much, but it kind of made the lips pop just a tiny little bit. So I wanted to make her eyes look quite smoky and kind of brown and golden kind of eyeshadow on them to match her hair and to match the kind of the gold tones in the metallic colours later on. So I used the markers E84 khaki, and I used the E44 clay again, and I used Y29 Lilac Gold, which I also use in her hair. And for our eyes I used the khaki again, but I kind of added YG63 pea green to kind of bring them out a little bit more. Oh, and I also used the deep brown marker to outline the eyes and kind of blend it out into the eyeshadow a little bit more, and I can't remember exactly what this marker was, but I think it was E47 dark brown. So for her hair, I wanted to give her a golden brown hair colour, so I used the Pro marker for the base because I didn't have the right golden yellow in the Copic markers, so I used Y156 sunflower yellow, and then over the top of that I used the Y28, the gold colour, and then the dark brown E47 and some E29 burnt umber in the kind of darker tones. I decided not to go into too much detail with the hair because I wanted the attention to be drawn to other features such as her face and her dress and the patterns in the background, and I thought going into detail like colouring in strand by strand hair would not be such a good idea here, so I kind of went for a more subtle look. So there isn't really much to say about the hair, other than I quite like how it matches the eyeshadow a little bit and kind of they complement each other quite well. And yeah, I normally would colour the hair, like I said, a lot more kind of detailed and a lot more kind of depth and shading, but I didn't think that suited this piece. So just hope you enjoy the colouring of hair for a bit, and I'll be back when I start colouring in the dress in the background. So I coloured the feathers quite a deep teal colour, and actually it matches my jumper quite nicely. I didn't do that on purpose, that's just a happy accident. So the colours I used for the feathers were BG49 duck blue, and this was the base colour, then going over the top of that with BG09 blue green, and then the darker shade was BG18. And later on I kind of went over the top with the white polychromos and a white gel pen to kind of bring out the highlights of the feathers a little bit more. But yeah, I do really like the colour of these feathers, but maybe I could have gone a little bit darker and deeper in the shadows. So for the dress, I didn't use any shading at all, as I wanted to keep it quite flat to emphasise the pattern and emphasise the kind of Art Deco-ness of the pattern. Art Deco-ness, not sure if that's the word, but it should be. And I used 4 colours in the repeating pattern. I used BG49 dark blue, BG43 horizon green, and B32 pale blue. And then I also used a metallic pro marker, the violet one. And I really like these metallic pro markers because I think they are water based, not alcohol based, and they are really opaque, so they lay over the top of colours quite nicely. So later on I used the gold marker in the middle of the black dots in the background. And yeah, I really like this dress, and some people have said that it kind of reminds them of peacock feathers, and that wasn't my intention, but I can kind of see where they're coming from and I quite like that, so I'm gonna go with that. So I really found colouring in this pattern on the dress really quite therapeutic and quite satisfying, and yeah, I tried to match some of the colours in the dress, like the darker colour is the same colour as her feathers, and I also used the lighter colour in the background a bit later on to kind of help tie it all in together. So for the charm on her headband, I used the same colours as I did for the necklace. I used quite a little bit more pale aqua though here, and went over the top in some white gel pen afterwards. And I also made the gem in the middle the same colour as the feathers and the darker tone on her dress to kind of tie it all in again. And I also used the violet pro marker at the bottom of each of the little dangly bits. Not really describing this very well, but I hope you see what I mean. So moving on to the Art Deco pattern behind her head, I first laid down the block colours using G17 Forest Green, and this is another new marker I bought recently and I'm in love with it already, B24 Sky and B34 Horizon Green, which I used in the dress. And I then used G000 the pale green and BG000 pale aqua to kind of lift some of the colour, a bit like you would with a colourless blender, maybe a little bit, and this kind of helps give it a bit of a stained glass look rather than just keeping it completely flat, because the dress is completely flat, so I wanted to play around a little bit with texture. And I also used the white polychromos over the top as well to kind of give it a bit more of a glassy look. I'm not 100% sure this works, and there's probably another way I could have done it, but I think it looks okay. I also used a gold pro marker, the gold metallic pro marker, and a white gel pen over the top to kind of lift it a little bit more as well. And I think this works quite well. I quite like the gold because it kind of matches her eyes and the hair. So I coloured the background with my G000 pale green, and I did this for the whole background, and I added a little bit of pale aqua, and I think this works really well because it's quite pale and it then makes the rest of the drawing pop a little bit more. And also this green has a more of a blue tint to it, even though its code is a G. I think it probably should be labelled BG personally, but never mind. And yeah, I really like how this piece turned out. I think it's probably one of my favourite pieces of art this year, especially in this kind of cartoony style anyway. So I have made this piece available on my Redbubble store where you can buy prints and merchandise, so if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. So here is the final result. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're new here, please feel free to subscribe. I post new art videos every single Thursday and sometimes the occasional bonus video on a Sunday. And if you like this video, emotionally, please hit the like button down below, as that really helps me out. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Bye for now.